So it's been a busy week at Tottenham Hotspur. The arrival of RB Leipzig attacking midfielder Xavi Simons, a first league defeat of the season, as well as a potential deadline day deal for Randall Kolo Muani. Let's get straight into it. So starting with a signing, and not just any signing, a statement signing by Tottenham Hotspur, sort of signing which we've been longing for a long, long time. Something that shows that football is a priority, and they all the stuff that we hear about, all the money's being reinvested back into the football team, and that's a priority, which a lot of us have questioned over time. And one window is not going to change that, of course. But Xavi Simons, what a signing by Spurs! I really, really hope that he can stay fit and he can just slot in because he's a player with the best years ahead of him. 23 years old, already got so much experience. He's played in the Eredivisie with PSV Eindhoven. He's played in the Bundesliga with RB Leipzig. He's played in the French league with Paris Saint-Germain. And to have that much experience in really high quality leagues at the age of 23, and for him to arrive at Spurs, knowing that sort of now that Son's gone and Kane's not here anymore, that there is a bit of a void to be filled, to be that guy and just be put on pedestal as the superstar of Tottenham. It is such a huge signing, and you think of how emotionally taxing this transfer window has been. First, you've got the Gibbs White saga, and that's before we even get to the Gibbs White saga. You think of obviously won the Europa League last May, and it's something that we've craved, and we sort of don't know how to enjoy it, and we just want to bottle every single second of it up and keep it forever, never let things change. And then, you've got the news that Postecoglou moves on, so then already sort of like the goodwill that Spurs built up is sort of digging away. And then over the summer, you got Kudus coming in, a statement signing. What maybe not to the sense that a Xavi Simons would be, but an impressive signing. And then before that, you've got Frank coming in, and then the Gibbs White saga plays out throughout the summer. Feeding into the start of the season, only really concluding about a month before, about a week before our season starts. And then you've got the Super Cup, where it looks like new manager, good system coming in, players playing well, and you're thinking, yeah, all right, maybe Spurs are on the right track, and then we somehow lose that game in classic Tottenham fashion. And then you've got Burnley, and we build on that, and we go to Man City, and we're doing well, and then sandwich just in between, just as you think, I'm enjoying Tottenham, I'm liking the new season. Maybe Tottenham aren't as bad as I make out. Maybe this is good for my mental health. And then right in the middle, sandwiched in between that, you've got Barry Eze pretty much all being done, and then going to Arsenal in the midst of it, just putting a dagger straight through your back, through your heart, just when you're trying to get on with your week in between the football. And for us to end up with Xavi Simons, I really, really think that he, out of the three, I probably wouldn't have expected us to get, but I think he'd be the top option if we're chucking realism out the window, or what we thought would be realistic this window. And I said it about Eze, if he was to come in, and I still stand by the fact that if it was Eze instead of Simons, it would be one of the biggest signings since Rafa van der Vaart, or even maybe recently in Ndombele, even though it didn't work out. But for him to come in and choose Spurs and the Premier League, he's obviously taken Son's number as well, the number 7, and I really, really think that there's everything put in place for him to just explode as a footballer. And if we can ride the crest of that wave along the way, then we could be in for some good times. Obviously, a lot of it doesn't just depend on one player. We could have done with Xavi Simons on Saturday. The 1-0 loss to Bournemouth. If you didn't watch the game and you've seen a 1-0, you'd think, yeah, Bournemouth are a good team. These things can happen. All of this stuff, perfectly valid points. We got absolutely played off the park against Bournemouth. and it genuinely was one of the best away performances that I've seen at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for sure. But even going back as far as White Hart Lane, they absolutely dominated us. And how it was only 1-0, words are beyond me. Um, but you know, it was one of them games where, with Spurs, you always sort of, as soon as you're getting that good feeling going again and you're enjoying Spurs again, you wanted to pull the games towards you because, you're that enthusiastic about the new season and the way things are going. And then Spurs just come in and just just wedge right in between, you know, that that sort of parallel where it could go one way and your weekend could be ruined or everything's going to be, all sunshine and rainbows. I suppose just wedge in and it's sort of sitting very finely and it could go either way. And then it just flops on the other side and you just left thinking, fucking hell, Spurs, fuck's sake. But, maybe that's just me. But we really just didn't turn up at all. A lot of sort of it was a lot of hit and hope going forward. One thing I've noticed about Brennan Johnson since Frank's come in is quite often he's trying these sort of, we'll stretch out wide and then he might come in and try and play that ball in behind the defence to get maybe the opposite winger or the striker in. And there's a couple of times where you could see, Spence was coming inside, and there's a couple of times where he's saying, come closer, I need you to come closer. And then and then he'd sort of come in off that left hand side, and it's almost like his body was acting faster than his mind because he was trying to play these sort of inside passes where it go bang, bang, and bounce off. But he was just getting the technique all wrong. And there's a few times with Richarlison where we, didn't really get him behind at all. But in the first half, where you'd work it into a nice area, sort of, holding the defender off a little bit and just waiting, biding your time, wait for players to come up the pitch. And it would just come and he'd drop a shoulder. And just when you expect to finish, just sort of head down, looking at the floor, not looking up. And it's just a sort of hit and hope ball, which Bournemouth was so easily, set up to deal with that. It's quite interesting because from our goal kicks, they had about 5 people in the center of the pitch, really, really aggressive, like pushing us back in that sense. And it's quite obvious that, in terms of when we wanted to play up to Richarlison, that was one of our danger balls. So the Bournemouth defenders, quite often it was either Senesi or I think it was Diakite, the other Bournemouth defender, were really tight to him and, not letting him play at all. And it's almost like if we can deal with Richarlison, we don't need to worry about, the midfield because it was almost like they were leaving a gap to stop where Bentancur and Paulinho were. And then almost Sarr was just given that space sort of just into Richarlison, just where you think that's where you ideally want your goalkeeper to chip the ball into, even though it's a difficult pass to play. And I think Bournemouth sort of looked at Vicario and they've seen he's a little bit shaky, even if he does get, the pass off, he doesn't always look comfortable. And there's a couple of times where they were just quite happy for him to go long because they knew that, as long as they were marking Richarlison, it's going down the centre of the pitch, they'd win the ball. And they did it so many times. And 2 players from Bournemouth which stood out. Alex Scott was unbelievable. What a player he's going to be. Obviously, being a Bristol lad, I'm aware of Alex Scott. I've got friends who are Bristol City fans who, the other player I mentioned as well, Semenyo, who also come from Bristol City. You sort of heard good things and you hear him coming and maybe you might pick and choose some games where you go out of your way to watch them and you think, yeah, there's something there. This was a game where Semenyo definitely, but I thought Alex Scott absolutely, just really asserted himself and showed that he's just so comfortable playing at that level. There's a lovely little ball roll we did to get away from Paulinho, and Paulinho just scythed him down. So you've got him who's, pulling all the strings in midfield. And then you've also got Semenyo on the left, who's a player that we were linked with. He's obviously signed a new contract. Whether that's got a new release clause, who knows? But he was unbelievable. Porro, he does have some games where he has a bit of a stinker, but Semenyo was just so good. He was bullying him every time. Some some people saying he should have been sent off. I don't think it was. It was on a booking and he just sort of just caught someone. But yeah, work to do. Some of the subs that come on, Bergval, you know, he did eventually have a bit of an impact, but it wasn't really until he was moved deep and Matisse Tell come on. And Tell very nearly got the equaliser. Lovely little volley from the edge of the box, just went wide. Just got his timing off a little bit wrong in terms of the direction he wanted to send the ball in. But we didn't really look like we ever intended to win that game. And it's early days for Frank. I'm not, look, these things happen. Iriola is a really good manager. Bournemouth are a really good team. And on paper, you'd expect us to beat them. But obviously, as I say, football's not played on paper, and many things that can look assert like Nottingham Forest on the weekend. I would have definitely had them down to beat West Ham, and then West Ham go and turn them over 3-0. These things can happen. I think what was more worrying was more the performance. We just looked really disjointed, and it was almost a bit like if Bournemouth could stop Mohamed Kudus, they'd stop Tottenham. And I think that's exactly what they did. They really handled Richarlison well. And I think if you were a Bournemouth fan, you probably would have left Spurs on Saturday thinking a bit disappointed it was only one, because it could have genuinely been 3 or 4 in that first half. They're a really good team. And yeah, I'm sure they'll put better teams than us and worse teams than us away this season. And yeah, moving on to it's deadline day as I'm recording this. The time is 10 to 9. The window shut at 7, but all reports are saying that PSG striker Randall Kolo Muani has signed a contract to join Tottenham on loan. And I think it brings to a close a window where, we've not addressed all of the problems in the squad. But I think we've ticked off a fair few, and I think we've done it with, you know, 3 or 4 players that are really going to improve us in that first team. Straight away, I think Kolo Muani, having not watched him extensively, only sort of in drips and drabs, he's a player which I imagine will be probably pushing Richarlison really fine, or if not, starting in that starting 11. And then you've got Xavi Simons to come in, already, wax lyrical about him. You've got João Palhinha, again, another loan, which, is sort of low risk, high reward. He's come in on loan. And then you've also got Mohamed Kudus. And already, I think, I'm never afraid to give, the club stick. Well, not really the club, the more the way it operates. And look, I think, I believe in everything that Change for Tottenham do. I think they're a really good organisation, which has definitely got the fans' views at heart, and they put it across in a respectful way. And I probably will be amongst the protest against Wolves, not decided yet. But if you're going to give the club, you've got to give them their flowers for this window. Yes, there's still glaring that we probably need a left centre back, or either left or right back for the squad, as well as maybe that starting left winger now that Son's gone. But you've also got to think that players like Odegaard and Tell, they're going to need opportunities at some point. And once everyone's back fit, you think of some of the attacking depth that we'll have now in terms of players that can play in that, free behind the striker. Got Brennan Johnson, 18 goals last year. When he's back, Kulusevski, who I think was probably our player of the year first half of the season last year. You've got James Maddison. You've got Xavi Simons. you've got Wilson Odobert, you've got Matisse Tell. That's seven options where I'd say, seven options to cover three positions. I think that's really good depth. Well, not really good. I won't get that far. I think that's quite impressive, especially when everyone's fit. And yes, look, now that Son's gone and we've not got that left wing, it probably will feel a bit more glaring, of course, with more injuries. But overall, you know, I think probably probably the best window that we've had for a while. This could come back to bite me, but it's just how I'm feeling at the minute. Um, and in terms of Kolo Muani, you think of some of the players that have come from Frankfurt, the Ekatikes and Marmoushes of the world. Kolo Muani was he was Frankfurt's guy before Ekatike, before Marmoush, and is almost sort of doing some research. You forget that PSG paid a fair amount of money to get him in, and he's went to Juventus last year, 8-16, really good record. And when I woke up this morning and I seen Dominic Solanke was injured, I thought, oh, this is just it. We're just building a little bit of momentum, and now we're being knocked back down. And I really didn't see us getting anyone in. I thought I think there's some rumours up until about yesterday afternoon about Akanji, sort of preferring to stay in the Premier League. And then as the day grew, starting to see more and more about Kolo Muani. And then before you know it, he's, flying over, and there's the Here We Go from Fabrizio Romano. And it's good, you know, it's good just building momentum and not letting deals drag and die. Because I think that's what's happened with deals like Gibbs White, deals like Eze. For whatever reasons, all the reports that are coming out are that, we might have been, dallying over this, or, you know, sort of haggling. And, a famous saying in business that a lot of people say is time kills deals. And as someone with no business acumen as someone with no business acumen at all, it's fairly easy to see why that's a fairly simple principle in business. But credit where it's due. The last week or two, we've really sort of, you know, got into action, almost like a fireworks, been set off behind us, just lit that fuse, get us going in the transfer window. How much of that is down to Fabio Paratici coming back? We don't know. I don't know if he's officially come back yet, or if he's still been doing his, unofficial consultancy role. But it's looking good. Obviously, we'd be feeling a lot better if, Bournemouth, if we'd beat them and we'd gone into the next game with, you know, 3 wins from three. But, there's also the catch-22 effect of, in an alternate universe, we could be going in, having just beaten Bournemouth, but having not had a Solanke replacement and having to rely on just Richarlison up front all season, who himself has his injury issues. But yeah, overall, going into the international break, West Ham away, so I think that's definitely going to be a game that they're going to be up for. And yeah, hopefully we see a Xavi Simons debut, maybe even a Randall Kolo Muani debut if it does happen. It's not been announced yet, as far as I'm aware. It is 5-9, and it does look like it's not been announced yet. But all the reports saying it has been. So please, please announce it pretty soon, Spurs, because you're going to make me look stupid. And yeah, until then, I'll see you in the next one. Up the Spurs.